we will tell you about one of France's leading defense companies. It happens to someone. So a hacker allegedly stole a terabyte of sensitive data from the company. Did you hear that, sir? There is also talk that Russia might be behind it. So much so that I will tell you the details right now. Of course, we call this an allegation, because in the end, there is no clear statement from the French side. The news in the French press belongs to that company. Among the 1 terabyte of data belonging to the defense company, software for weapon systems is also being stolen. There are infrastructure manuals, classified correspondence, all sorts of things, some of which are shared. The rest, of course, is kept to itself. Now, what does this mean? First of all, Ayhan Hokam, I would like to talk to you about who is behind it. What do you think? Now, we may have actually made a bit of a transition to Russia from here. Could it be Russia? Could it be Israel? Maybe the answer to the question when we talk about the recognition of Palestine, when Macron has at least declared this, could Israel be behind it? Which country would you place on the first step in the answer to the question of who could it be?
I don't think it's the first step. I think it's the only step. I think it's Israel, very clearly and unambiguously. I think it's Israel. Because when we look at a process like this, France, he made much more serious moves against Russia. There have been many moves, such as gathering an army, going there militarily if necessary, sending our soldiers, sending peacekeepers. In none of these, this kind of move, counter move, came from the Russians. We have just talked about it. The Russians are trying to stir up Europe with hybrid warfare methods, as Zeynep Hoca put it, especially in the elections. I think by making some interventions, by planning terrorist attacks, but when we follow the process of this, last week France said that in September, I will recognize Palestine as a state.
35 billion, yes.
Immediately afterwards, defense ministers, foreign ministers, members of the Knesset, from Netanyahu to who knows who, Gideon Sa'ar, Katz. So there was a statement from all of the Israeli MPs. But one statement was very interesting. Statement from the Israeli foreign minister, Gideon Sa'ar. France, we will see whether he will be able to control the streets of Paris after this time. He made such a shocking threat. And this attack came right after this threat. When I first read the news, I looked at the headline and I thought that Israel had backed up its threat.
That's true. Well, sir, I will ask you something. We will get there. But what does it mean to have a cyber attack under a submarine? You know, in a simple way that we can understand, yes, a lot of data has been accessed and these will be shared. Maybe, you know, we say Israel did it. We are talking about Israel's construction, but does one submarine mean many submarines at the same time? I mean, all submarines, but I am asking this question in order to be able to imagine that company a little bit.
Now, I am not going into such technical details. I am not a foundation, but I can easily say this. Submarines especially have nuclear capacity. France also has nuclear capacity, even nuclear submarines. The most important feature is that in wars, after a certain point, they go under the sea, and nobody knows where that under the sea is, except for very 3-5 people of that country. Why is this important? If your country, France for example, is attacked by another country, there is something called a second strike capacity. That is, you say to the other states, you are my country. Even if you destroy all my lands with complete attacks, my capacity to strike you a second time, don't strike a second time, I have the capacity to launch a counterattack. Under this threat, you usually fill it with nuclear submarines, submarines with nuclear warheads. So it is a very strategic weapon. Israel has it, France has it, America has it, Russia has it. This is a weapon that you use to increase your deterrence to all states. Element. Now, this is one of the 3 to 4 most strategic weapons in the hands of that state, so we can compare it with these. Hypersonic missiles, nuclear submarines, these are the deterrent powers and capacities of states at the highest level. You have to provide the most intimate information about this, the information that maybe 3 or 5 people in France know, through hackers like this. As soon as you share it with the public, you are saying that we know everything about you down to your most capillary veins.
So it's also an assassination of reputation.
The cyber assassination is also a huge security breach. I mean tomorrow, you can give that information to the enemies of France. So even if you don't use it yourself, when you give that information to the enemies of France, you create a huge security vulnerability in France. This is also a preliminary sign, a flare. Look, they did the same thing in Spain. When the friction between Spain and Israel rose above a certain level, Spain started to openly threaten Israel. He started criticizing Israel. He declared that he would not give arms to Israel, that he imposed an arms embargo. And what happened in Spain? Suddenly there was a power outage. All Spanish SIM cards, those cellular data networks were suddenly blocked. They were unable to withdraw money. They locked the system. Who did it? It was 1% million Israelis. The reaction they showed to Spain, the move they made, they have now made another version of it in France. And in this way, they are intimidating other states. In other words, Israel is telling both Spain and France that if you continue to quarrel with us, we will only take you through the Zionist lobby. We don't put pressure on global capital. We don't put pressure on America. We don't do things to you. It is also the dirtiest, the ugliest. They have turned the game uglier and uglier in order to threaten your security and to paralyze the daily lives of your people. These ugly moves of Israel are not only directed against Palestine, Gaza, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, Syria. Look, he also sees what he did to European states. But let me tell you this, Ms. Sumaya. Here you go. I think these moves are actually, in the medium and long term, I think it's a good thing when we look at it in a more high-pitched strategic way. Why is it good? So? Europe. Israel's ugly, dirty, terrorist state aspect that the people of the region have been seeing for years is slowly starting to come to life. So now we can say a little bit, look, here is that terrorist state, the terrorist state that you have nurtured and raised. This is such a state. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow, when it finds the opportunity, it will do the same to you. It will use those terror elements on you. Now let me underline this statement.
I really want to believe it, but is that what
I'm going to underline it. Look, if I ask the audience here, who is the number one state that enabled Israel to settle in the Palestinian territories? We start from the Balfour Declaration. It's England, right? After the end of the Second World War, Israel sees that England is now tying their feet to the fire, and there is a stronger state than England. There is a state that it can use more. Who is it? The United States of America. Look, the whole settlement in Palestine, the terrorist elements there, expanding its occupation, creating a state-like entity. What is it doing to Britain, which it used to evolve? It organizes terrorist attacks. Our viewers can open and look at the King David Hotel attack. More than 20 British officials, including British people, lost their lives. Who is doing this? Israeli terrorists. Then there is the kidnapping of 2 British soldiers by Israeli terrorists and hanging them because their demands were not met. So this is their history. They used Britain, and then they tried to get Britain out of Palestine with terrorist elements and terrorist attacks. America and Europe, which currently support the genocide, will also show their terrorist face tomorrow and the day after tomorrow when their interests diverge in this way. Israel will show. It has started to show it now. In that sense, I am saying that those states, states like France, are now starting to pay the price for supporting that terrorist state. Keir Starmer also made a statement today. We may recognize it in September if there is no ceasefire. It's going to happen to the UK tomorrow.
It's going to happen, isn't it?
But let me repeat at the end, this is not really Israel's success. This is Israel's strategic blindness. Look, first they expanded all the fronts in the region. They turned all the peoples in the region into enemies. They turned countries into enemies. Now it has spread to Europe. It is also alienating Europe from itself.
You talked about the moves. Will these moves continue? I mean, here it is. Will it evolve to the point where it will stir up the streets of Paris, just like he said in his sentence?
It will, that is to say, this terrorist state is now out for blood. It has accepted its rationality and explanations.
Then it will be very public. Can they now say that we are not behind this, we did not do such a thing, and try to hug them?
They will not do that publicly either. They will, of course, do it secretly through front organizations. But the important thing is, Ms. Sumaya, that state knows who did it. Right now, for example, Spain cannot explain this. Of course, Israel attacked us, but Spain most probably knows that Israel did it. It got the message. France, of course, also knows who did it, and it also got the message. Now the question is, Will Israel be able to bring the Europeans in line with these threats or not? My view is that it will not be able to bring them into line and that it will make more enemies, more rivals with such moves. If it continues in this way, at this pace, I have been saying this for 2 years, since October 7th, and I still stand by my claim. The massacres, genocide crimes committed by Israel, starting from Palestine, starting from Gaza, the whole region, terrorizing various parts of the world, does not show the strength of Israel's power or its success. On the contrary, Israel is increasingly, it shows that they are in the early stages of a dying, disappearing state. In other words, they are undermining themselves. God willing, if they continue at this rate, if they continue with this terrorist state logic, they will come to this end even faster, even closer. In the next few years, we will all witness how this terrorist state will collapse.